I rise today to speak on Bill 66. Mr. Speaker, the government talks about restoring Ontario's competitiveness, but we need to be clear about what they want Ontario to be competitive in. The Premier's agenda suggests the government doesn't want to be competitive in the fast-growing clean economy, a $7 trillion a year global economic opportunity. The government doesn't seem to want to compete in the high-wage economy after they froze Ontario's minimum wage. Bill 66 shows the government wants to compete in a race to the bottom, a race that most people in Ontario don't want to win. We've heard members of the government wax on about small businesses who are buried under paperwork. And if this legislation was about making life easier for small businesses, then I'd be on board. If the government wanted to reduce red tape for low-income people who are forced to fill out mounds of paperwork and navigate lots of bureaucracies to obtain the services they need and deserve, then I'd be on board. But that's not what's happening here. Under the guise of cutting red tape, the government has threatened to punch holes in Ontario's greenbelt, threatening our food-growing farmland. They've opened the door to unraveling clean water laws put in place after the Walkerton tragedy. In December, I asked the government why they were creating legal paths for municipalities to pave over the greenbelt and violate the Clean Water Act. At the time, the minister accused me of fear-mongering. Well, Mr. Speaker, the response from municipalities and citizens was on my side. They told the Premier to keep his hands off our greenbelt. They said protecting water and public health is not red tape. Countless municipal councils passed resolutions saying they were not willing to sacrifice our water and green space for a campaign slogan. And so while I applaud the minister for tweeting that Schedule 10 of Bill 66 will be withdrawn, I asked the Premier why the government considered it in the first place. I want to thank the thousands of citizens who mobilized to protect our water, our food-growing farmland and green space. And I ask those citizens to remain vigilant, because this government has a number of reviews already underway that threaten farmland, water, green space, and endangered species. How can any government consider itself fiscally responsible when it threatens the environmental services like clean water and farmland that nature provides for free? The Greenbelt alone provides $3.2 billion of environmental goods and services to the people of Ontario every single year. The food and farming sector contributes over 800,000 jobs and $40 billion to Ontario's economy. What government that's open for business would threaten to pave over the asset base of all those jobs and all that wealth? So, Speaker, in my limited time today, I want to focus on two other schedules in addition to the dreaded Schedule 10. The first is Schedule 5, the Toxic Reductions Act. Of all the ways to cut red tape, why loosen requirements around reducing toxins? Ontario already has some of the highest emissions of toxins of any jurisdiction in North America, second only to Texas. And so instead of reducing or eliminating the Toxic Reductions Act, we should be strengthening it, because clearly the previous government's act wasn't getting the job done. Do we really want to attract businesses to Ontario that don't want to be straight with the people of Ontario about the toxins that they are putting into our environment affecting our public health? The health minister is making an announcement right now about changes to the healthcare system, and one of the most fundamental ones is making sure we have a healthy environment. Next, I just want to touch on Schedule 3, which increases child care ratios in the Child Care and Early Years Act. We need childcare to be available along a range of options so that people can choose safe and licensed providers. But the current ratios were put in place to save children's lives. So what government considers regulations that were put in place to protect the people we love as red tape? And so I urge this government to remove those schedules from Bill 66 as well. Let's have an honest conversation about ways to reduce red tape on small businesses, ways to reduce duplication and paperwork. But, Mr. Speaker, not at the expense of public public safety in our environment, the food land, the farmland, and our water. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.